Good evening, lumberjacks, and welcome back to A Tetra T, your weekly podcast where we cover everything from your mama's drawers to the biggest donut ever baked. I'm your host, J.R. Harris, and today we're going to cover music, more particularly hip hop and the current state of the rap game. We're going to start with a little bit of history, followed by an interview with a fan of hip hop. So, hip hop. What began as breakdancing and disc scratching has evolved into one of the largest music genres in the world. While legends like Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and Ice Cube are all hitting the era of time when they're ready to stop producing, releasing, and move into teaching, new artists like Token, Young Gravy, and Logic are taking their place. What does this mean for the future of rap, though? Is mumble rap becoming the dominant age, or can the respect for the roots of hip hop overpower and persevere among such a controversial age in hip hop? We see hip hop everywhere we go. As music becomes more prevalent in everyday life, we see styles and genres begin to merge, especially into the rap and EDM communities. While rock has been associated with hip hop since the 80s, genres like pop music and even country are blending their ways into rap and EDM. Even if you don't like, at the core, rap music, it can't be avoided. Even Beyonce rapped once or twice. So today we have a fan on the phone, a loyal fan of rap, James H., here to discuss the future of hip-hop with me. Alright, so I'm here with James H., connoisseur of rap since the late 80s, early 90s, okay? And we're just going to do a quick interview with him, ask him a couple questions about rap and what he thinks about it, how the state of it's changed over time. Are you ready to go, James?
Yep.
Awesome, that's wonderful. So, from my understanding, you've been a fan of hip hop and rap music for quite a long time, is that right?
Yes, I've been a fan of hip hop and rap since I was probably 8, so about 31 years now.
That's a lot of time to get acclimated to the rap game, and it's changed a lot since you started listening to it. You started with artists like Tupac, Dr. Dre, those founders of the foundations of hip hop that we all love from the 90s. Whereas we're in times like Lil Pump, Token, Tech Nine's really big right now, so it's changed a lot. What do you think about this change in the rap game specifically?
It was a natural progression. When I first started, it was breakdancing. So it was a lot of beats, not a whole lot of lyrics. Mainly, you get your cardboard out and you wax it up and you breakdance. That evolved into gangster rap in the early 90s, late 80s. So that was a natural evolution where they brought, real life street um, ideas and concepts to hip hop. And that's, when you get into your Tupacs and your Snoops and Dre's, and they all brought that in. Of course, you had the East Coast with Onyx and, Fat Joe and the Terror Squad and all those guys out there. And then, of course, we had the big West Coast, East Coast hip hop wars, which eventually went from diss tracks to street violence, and we lost Biggie and Pac, and that was a big deal. And then if we hit a stage where we had the P Diddy's and the Jay Z's, and it became about money and cars and partying, and not so much the real life stuff as much as a glorified lifestyle. But I think progression always has to happen. I mean, ruts can't stay. And of course, old school cats like me will listen to a Blueface or a Lil Pump and be like, "What the hell happened to hip hop?" Because this isn't hip hop, And younger guys nowadays will listen to what I listen to and go, "What the hell is this, old man? Simple rhymes and easy beats. What's that about?" So, wherever you grow up in hip hop, I think that's where you tend to want to live. But yeah, I think the evolution had to happen, and it's going to continue to happen as people's lifestyles change.
And I especially like the point you made about people growing up in different styles, especially in the modern era, because that's how you get people like the famous, freestylers of the era. You have, like I mentioned earlier, Token, and you have Lil Dicky, who's really popular in comedy rap, getting roots from people like Spose, Jean Lajoie, and Other people grew up in different eras, so they start getting into the mumble rap era. But do you think that because of the dominance of like the mumble rap era, that it's going to phase out all these other artists of the old era of rap and hip hop, especially with the rise of beats over vocals? Will it bring in a new era of hip hop?
Well, and I mean I can see that, but at least I've tried to teach my kids the foundations of hip hop, you know. And I think, much like anything else, if you teach the history of where it came from, you not only can appreciate where it's at, but where it came from. And that's a big deal because knowing the roots and how they go back to 70s funk, which is really where hip hop started. You had your Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, all these guys bringing that funk from the late 70s into the 80s, and then it became the breakdancing fad. So, I mean, you had a real solid base there, and, I made it a point to take, my kids to Grandmaster Flash when he came to do a lecture at University of Arizona. I took, you know, you guys to go see that, um, and learn and kind of see the roots of where that came from. But I think it's important even now, a lot of the groups that I listen to would be considered underground, so they're not going to be mainstream. They're not going to be on your radio dials. But I stick kind of with that because it's modern, but it has those roots that go deep into the history. So it still sounds like the hip hop I grew up with, but kind of with a modern twist, you know?
Yeah, yeah, but some legends, such as the ever popular Marshall Mathers, also known as Eminem, have adapted these old styles, fused them into the mainstream. How exactly do you feel about that?
Well, you're talking about the GOAT in hip hop, first off. Um, I think he brought his own style. I don't think he adapted an old style or created a new style. I think, or adapted to a new style, I should say. He is who he is. He has one of the most complex rhyming schemes ever, and it's not just like certain tracks. It's every track. It's an A B C. I mean, he rhymes, 4 lines previously with what he's saying now, and it's so complex, but it makes sense. And it amazes me how his mind works. Um, but you see even him throwing back to the old school. You take Marshall Mathers OP2. He went and he got stuff from like uh, Tommy James and the Shondellas, for some of his samples. He went back and worked with Rick Rubin on some stuff and pulled in more of that 90s, like straight hip hop sound. Like, he always tries to infuse classic uh, bits or parts into what he's doing. But even in this latest album, Kamikaze, he took mumble rap and turned it on its head and showed that that style can be done properly and still sound good.
Well, I think that's an excellent analysis, and he's even in his least popular album, Revival, he brought in a sample from the Cranberries, which a lot of people really enjoyed in his In Your Head track. A lot of people didn't think he'd be able to take these tracks and use them, make them work within the style of rap. And I think it's really funny, actually, how you mentioned that he takes all these different styles. Like, he takes old rock and he takes street music and he takes it and makes music out of these. Because that's actually the state of the music industry right now. A lot of genres are being merged into EDM and hip hop. A lot of these genres are conforming to what we know as hip hop, rap music, EDM. Marshmello, actually, very popular EDM artist. He's been working with a lot of people, and Eminem, along with other rappers like Tech Nine, use EDM beats and rock to form the basis for their raps.
Right, and I mean, you got to remember that rock and hip hop have been universally married since Limp Bizkit. I mean, they were really one of the original bands that took, well, and the Beastie Boys, I guess, if you want to go back even further. But they took rock and made hip hop and rock work. It became new rap or new metal. Those two things kind of merged with Korn and Limp Bizkit. But the Beastie Boys back in the day took rock and made it popular. You had Aerosmith and Run DMC that combined back in the day. Um, but I think, what Eminem can do that other people can't is bring all that stuff in and make it work. But I think it shows his fond appreciation for the music business in general, not hip hop specifically or rap specifically, but music. And I think he understands that all different kinds of music from the 50s and through today, there's some value in it. And I think it's nice that he's bringing that to a modern market so that the history of music doesn't die.
Yeah, exactly. I've actually got a couple of questions, and one of them kind of relates, and that's mainstream music. There's this idea that you're independent, you're really starting to become popular, which is the case with an artist that I've mentioned a couple of times, Token, who's on the verge of signing to a label. And in that one album, his debut, kind of Between Somewhere, he said it's about being stuck between wanting to be independent, stick with his values, and on the other hand, signing to a label, becoming mainstream, losing those values to become popular. Do you think that people can just give up their values, or they do give up their values when they become mainstream or popular so they can get their word out? I mean, do you think that they get corrupted by this huge music
Well,
industry?
let's look at another artist, Tech Nine.
Yes, the biggest independent artist in the world.
Right, largest independent artist in the world. When he started out, he was rapping for Juggalos at the Gathering of the Juggalos. He was winning an MC contest to get a track with ICP. Like that was way back in the day. And then he came out, and he did independent stuff, created strange music, brought other artists in. He's evolved and become this huge thing without having to sign his life away to a label. The reason I say that is because a lot of artists think I need to get signed with a label to make it.
Well, it's even more prevalent today, especially with streaming. Spotify, Apple, SoundCloud. With these streaming services out there, it's becoming harder to get noticed because these streaming services only show popular artists and not those who are rising up.
Well, it is harder to get noticed, but I think that any artist that wants to make it has to have the hustle. Anyway, there's very few times where you're gonna be at the right place at the right time with the right people to get the right deal signed to blow up. That's a rare occurrence and it doesn't happen all the time. Most of the groups that you see make it on an independent level, Tech Nine being a prime example, they put out an album and they tour about 300 days a year. They're always on the road. They're always in people's faces. They're always doing shows. They're always selling merch. They're always selling albums. They never stop. And then when they're home for that 60 days, 100 days, or whatever it is a year, they're back in the studio making another album, doing features, connecting with other artists, doing tours, doing festivals, doing whatever. And they never stop. And I think that's where the idea that you need to sign with a label gets lost. Because back in the day, when you had to get hard pressed copies of your album, whether it's CD, cassette, LP, vinyl, whatever, you had to go to a label because they had to front the money for the studio time to make your album. Now you can make an album in your garage. You don't even need a studio anymore. Is the quality going to be there? Probably not, but you can do it. And you can put out a track every single day for a whole year. You can put out 365 tracks a year if you really wanted to. And we see with, guys like Logic. We see with a lot of the newer, younger hip hop guys like Little Dicky. I don't know if he's signed with a major label or if he's still doing it independent. But he became popular with comedic rap. Right,
Yes,
that
with
was his thing.
professional rapper featuring Snoop Dogg. That's how he blew up.
Right. So he did one track with Snoop Dogg. People were like, oh, this dude's pretty funny, and they checked out the rest of his stuff. He probably paid a bundle to get that feature done, but it was worth it. And that was another example of he found a way to hustle to get himself noticed. And it didn't require him signing with a label, having them advance him money, creating an image for him, putting out an album, sending singles to the record, to the radio stations. It didn't have to happen that way.
No, I actually believe his first song was Save That Money with Fetty Wap, where he spent little to no money at all, actually. He went around and I think just asked people if he could use their houses as backdrops for his video.
Right, and that's my point. Back in the day, you had to get with a label because every video that was made, every album that was made, every studio that was being used cost a grip of money. So you had to be advanced that money. And then when your first album sold, let's say you sold 1 million copies, you went platinum, right? And then your record label took their bit and your producer took his bit, and oh, you owe us all this money from all these things we fronted for you, the limos, the flights to the shows, the all this other stuff, and you sell 1 million albums at $15 a piece. That's $15 million, and what goes in your pocket is about 50,000 because everybody else takes their piece before you get yours. That's how the industry used to be.
And so, where do you think the industry is now in terms of how much artists make based off of their music? Taylor Swift, a bit off the rap subject, but relevant to all artists who stream today, had a dispute with Spotify and Apple because they weren't paying her to stream music or others to stream her music. And now, because of that, they pay artists to stream their music.
Well, back in my younger days, we had Napster, and that was a big deal. Napster, you could go and get music for free. You could download it for free. So albums became irrelevant, and that was kind of the beginning of the MP3 age, where you could go to Napster, you could download whatever songs you liked. You didn't have to download whole albums. And then Metallica got pissed, and they were losing money, and they fought Napster, and that was a big deal. And then you had guys like Cypress Hill and Limp Bizkit go on a Napster tour, and it was a completely free tour. They just went out and tore up shows for free. But it's two different sides of the same coin in that you have artists that are going to fight for every dime, and then you're going to have artists that, just put out music because they love music. I think it's no harder to make it today than it was back then. The biggest difference is today it's not album sales, it's tour sales and merchandise sales. So it's a little bit different venue to get your money.
I really like that because everything does change. And the world in general needs change to be able to progress and get to new levels. So new artists can come out with new styles. If you stay in one style for a really long time, it can start to seem monotonous, marginal. I've actually only got one more question for you today, and then I can let you off the hook. I know that I'm keeping you a bit, but so how do you feel? Where do you feel the rap industry is going? What do you think that the future of hip hop in general is?
It depends. Um, really on the new artists and how much respect they pay to the roots that are there. I think if we get this generation to continue in mumble rap where they don't really respect roots as much as they should, you're going to continue to get albums like Kamikaze, where I believe the greatest of all time comes at you and says, "Look, I took your shitty style and I made it better. I took your crappy style and I made it sound good." You had when he put out Rap God, somebody had said Eminem's past it. I'm the rap king, and at the end of that song, he says, "Why be a king when you could be a god?" And I think that right there is the level, right? You have these guys that look at him and they want to compete with him and they want to be there, but they want to do it disrespectfully, right? When Eminem came in the game, he started working with Dr. Dre, and it was all about respect, all about knowing those roots, all about knowing where that legend that was like propping you up and helping you get there came from.
MGK.
MGK is a prime example. He wanted to take on Eminem. Now, why did he do it? So he could get his 10 minutes of fame. You know, I believe one line in that song says something about, you know, I had to, or what did he say? I had to make you a career so I could kill it.
Yeah, he said I had to give you a career to destroy
Right.
it,
So
actually.
he acknowledged MGK was nothing before the beef, and then acknowledged me responding. I know is going to give you play, but now I'm going to use my lyrics to beat you down and destroy it. Like he knew, like the disrespect was what had happened, and that's how he handled it. And I think that speaks volumes for new hip hop and classic hip hop. The new guys think you have to disrespect legends to get known. Legends know you have to respect the roots and the legends before you and grow on top of that legacy. So I think if we can get a group of artists coming out, and I believe Logic's kind of there. He's working with Eminem and he's showing him a lot of respect. Building upon, you had Dr. Dre building upon Funkmaster Flex. You had Snoop Dogg building on Dre. You had the Dog Pound building on Snoop Dogg, and so on and so on. And then you had Eminem building on Dre. And now you have artists looking at Eminem and trying to trash him, but there are very few out there you've seen that respect him and are actually going to him for advice. Hey, help me out, make me
Like
better.
Logic, and especially K. Dot, otherwise known as Kendrick Lamar, Eminem, Dr. Dre, and Interscope, the legends are taking all of these people under their wings to teach them to write for when they retire.
Right. And that's the thing. I don't think they necessarily have to retire, but we're going to see them stop making albums, and we're going to see them pull into in a producer role. And then these young guys have to be able to stand up as the legends for the next era. And once there becomes a line where the new era doesn't care or respect the legends, hip hop's going to die. And it's sad to say. But I don't think we'll ever get there because enough people grow up with hip hop and understand that legacy is important that we won't ever see it go away.
Wow, that's actually really beautiful and something I talk about with a lot of people and really think about. I like the way people think about music and how it's going to progress, especially since a lot of people in the modern era say they don't like rap music and hip hop music. But it's so ingrained in our culture. Everybody does it. Beyonce did a few songs that had hip hop beats and rap lyrics in them. You can't
And
escape
she
it.
actually rapped, and that was really creepy. So,
I agree. I think Beyonce has a wonderful voice, and she should use that wonderful voice. But we should talk about that another time if you ever want to talk again. Thank you so much for joining me today and being able to talk about this. It's a real pleasure to have other people on my show who talk, and you can kind of just get to know them. It's nice to hear the other opinions out there. Maybe next time, I mean, I'll have somebody who really likes mumble rap. They'll talk about why they think it has redeeming qualities. So have a great rest of the day. I hope that the rest of your May is wonderful, as
right, thanks.
Timberlake predicted. So have a fantastic day. Bye bye. So there you have it, everyone, from a fan of rap himself. I think we covered a lot of what I wanted to hit on here, and I believe that we're a bit over the time we had today. So I'll leave you with this. Music is a huge industry. Everyone has their own tastes and preferences. We're all different and should love and respect one another's differences. If you have any suggestions for our show and what you want to hear, email us at atetratpc@gmail.com. Thank you so much, and remember, the wind whispers only darkness.